Funding for this program has been provided by this station and more than 260 other public television stations nationwide, and by grants from Exxon Corporation and AT&T and the Bell System companies.
The boys are our endangered species. They're dying. They're dying in numbers. You will find that whether you're looking at health statistics or you're looking at criminal statistics, that is the black adolescent male who is the one that is doing the most dying. He is the cannon fodder for everyone else.
Good evening. One remarkable aspect of the current crime picture in the United States is the nationwide growth of street gangs. The well-known big city phenomenon of the 50s and 60s is not only on the rise again, according to police, but far more widespread. A new study reported in the Juvenile Justice Quarterly called Change estimates that there are now about 2,200 gangs with 96,000 members in approximately 300 cities and towns. The problem is greatest in the largest cities. Los Angeles County alone expects to have 400 gang-related killings this year. But the report shows that about half the gangs are in smaller cities, like Birmingham, Tucson, and Albuquerque, not only the traditional slums of northern cities, but also communities in the prosperous Sun Belt. This new wave of gang violence has revived an old debate over whether society should try to reform or rehabilitate young offenders or lock them away. Tonight, how to cope with gang violence. Jim?
Robin, there are no magic formulas, no quick and easy answers to the question of what to do about gang violence. Cities hit with the problem for the first time immediately look around for them, for a technique to copy, a success story to emulate. The pickings are slim. Only one major city in the country has produced what could be called a real success story in its dealing with the gangs. That city is Philadelphia, where one particularly successful part of the approach has even drawn praise from the President of the United States. Charlayne Hunter-Gault tells that story now.
Philadelphia, widely known as the city of brotherly love, was also once known as the gang capital of America. Back in the late 60s and early 70s, warfare among the city's 200 or so active gangs claimed the lives of between 30 and 40 teenagers each year. But in the last 5 years or so, gang warfare and bloodshed of that kind has all but disappeared. Few people have followed the rise and fall of gang violence in the city more closely than Aisel Moore, now an associate editor for the Philadelphia Inquirer. Moore has reported widely on the gang wars and what stopped them.
The measure of the gang problem traditionally had been measured in the number of deaths, but that was not really the true measure. During a period in the late 60s and early 70s, there were as many as 150 to 200 paraplegics in the city hospital as a result of the gang warfare in the city of Philadelphia. I would say that gang problem in Philadelphia during that time was as intense as any struggle, as a struggle in Northern Ireland or guerrilla warfare in other trouble spots of the world.
Superior Court Judge Frank Montemuro was chief administrative judge of the juvenile courts in Philadelphia during the worst years of the gang violence.
In 1 year, the city, state, federal, and non-governmental agencies had committed something like $5.2 million in resources for the gang problem. And it really wasn't doing anything. And that broke down to, depending on who was doing the counting, between $21,000 and $27,000 per gang.
What seems to have turned it around?
I think the reasons were myriad, but I would attribute the involvement of community groups and community support services to the drop in gang killings to the point where it's almost negligible today.
By all accounts, one of the most critical of those community groups is located in one of the toughest and most blighted areas of the city. Here on Fraser Street in West Philadelphia, one mother, Falaka Fattah, started a program for boys called the House of Umoja because her own son had joined a gang.
The boys are our endangered species. They're dying. They're dying in numbers. You will find that whether you're looking at health statistics or you're looking at criminal statistics, that is the black adolescent male who is the one that is doing the most dying. He is the cannon fodder for everyone else. So basically, my husband and I, we invited 15 members of the gang that my son belonged to come and live with us. We basically felt that if there was a stronger family unit, an extended family that could be a resource to them, that this would change their behavior from negative to positive.
Now, you brought the House of Umoja into being. It had a philosophy. What was that philosophy?
That basically that all women are mothers to all children and all men are fathers to all children. It has nothing to do with biology. Too many people talk to young people, but not enough of them listen to what they're saying. They use the word respect repeatedly. And I think that there's a definite lack of respect and that they were able to get this respect with the gang. If you go into prisons, you'll see the same way the word is used. So it's a combination of nurturing a sense of belonging and respect.
Mm-hmm. What kind of principles did you build into the House of Umoja to fill that need?
Well, I don't think that I did anything as an individual. I think what happened here was definitely a collective effort because I think we loaned our family to kids who needed one. And that with the gang, we became an extended family. We never tried to break the gang up, so that it was always an addition to what they had. And the only thing that they gave up was the gang warring.
The success of the House of Umoja not only had a rippling effect in Philadelphia, but word of it has extended far beyond the city's borders.
I wish the cynics would visit David and Falaka Fattah. This one couple did something that all the social welfare and law enforcement agencies together have been unable to accomplish. They replaced the gang structure with a family structure. They actually took a gang of 16 into their home. Their house of Umoja has helped more than 500 boys now develop into self-sufficient and productive young men. And today they're establishing what might be called an urban boys' town.
The Boys Town construction is divided between social development and economic development. Under social development, we have an art and photography studio, and then we have a youth employment agency. And further down the block, we have our mini mall, which is home for 7 different businesses. In all, we expect that these enterprises will eventually employ 125 youth. This would be the Security Institute, where young people are trained to be security guards, and they also are exposed to the whole criminal justice field because they may have other career options. And from this institute will come our security company to provide security to various private businesses. We have currently contracts with the local shopping mall. We have contracts with local mom and pop stores, and we have recently received a contract with 7-Eleven and Burger King. Our young people are called community officers, and they serve without benefit of any kind of nightstick or weapons, any guns. Basically, it's an additional eyes and ears, and because they know the neighborhood so well, they do act as a deterrent. On the construction jobs, we have a 12-man force. Maybe I should say 12-boy force. But in any case, these are young people who are being trained to fill laboring jobs in the construction field. And they're doing very well. They just started in August. And we're hoping that after they finish in terms of building the Boys Town, that they'll be able to get construction work elsewhere as well.
What goes on in the classrooms here?
Okay, we have both day and evening classes, and it's basically GED instruction. This is so that the people who have not been able to earn their high school diploma in the regular public schools can take an equivalency test. In the evenings, we have a teacher who gives them a little extra help, and this way our students are able to do well.
Character development is also key. At the daily conference, the day's goals are set, and sometimes a fair share of discipline is applied, as was the case with James, who got laid off from his construction job for talking back to the foreman.
He said if you raised your voice, he was going to take you off the job, right? And what did you do?
I walked home.
No, you said something before you walked home.
I didn't say nothing to him. I ain't say nothing.
What did you say, James?
I just said I was tired, that I was hitting the end of the sidewalk off, and I just was tired. I took a rest. He told me to get on, and all I said, right, why don't you get somebody else to do it? Right.
No, but the man told you not to give him any more, not to say nothing. And you just had to say one more thing. And that's why you're not working. If you were up on top of a ledge somewhere and your mouth was holding the rope, and if somebody said that was the only thing to keep you from dropping, and you had to say one more thing, that would be it. You'd be falling. That's why, is that right? I mean, if I were you, I'd be trying to tell him that you're sorry and you're not going to do that again or something.
How many brothers coming to the anniversary?
The actual glue that holds the house of Umoja together is the weekly Adela. Taken from the Arabic and meaning just and fair, the Adela is Umoja's system of government, where all of its issues come together.
Yes.
We have a brother here that used to be here, back in the day, 75 to 76. Brother Harold, known as Rat, And we just like to, know how the brother, made it once he left the house. Could you speak on that?
Yeah, well, see, because when I came, I was just like y'all, coming from an institution, hard-headed, out there gang one, didn't want to listen to nobody, But she turned that all around. She's saying the way to get around and to get myself together is to obey rules. Anywhere you go, you got to obey rules. You understand? So that's what I did, and I got out. When I got out there in the world, I started turning it the other way. Instead of me going against the law, I'm with the law now, And now I'm working as a store detective, plain clothes. I'm doing real good, a wife and family. And I have no faults, nobody looking for me, and I'm feeling real proud about myself. Wow. And if all you brothers do the same thing, and I'm sure y'all can do the same thing, man, it'll work out for your benefit.
But not everyone is as sure as Brother Rat. Harry Tischler, the chief prosecutor in Philadelphia's Juvenile Court Division, agrees that some young people can be saved through community-based programs, but argues that far more just may be beyond that kind of help.
Well, I think there's becoming a growing realization that even among juveniles there is a certain percentage that no one's going to reach, and that's why you see kind of a national movement towards having them tried as adults and unfortunately, put in prisons as being the only way to protect society from them.
It has never worked. You cannot just take and throw people in prison and think that you've solved the problem. You simply postponed it because they will come out, and they will come out worse than when they went in.
It'd be a little hard to believe that somebody who in juvenile courts committed 5 or 6 gunpoint robberies or that type of thing is going to become any more sophisticated or dangerous a criminal. At some point we got to take into consideration the safety of the community at large, that we just can't put somebody in a group home and hope that while you're trying to motivate him, he won't rob or shoot or stab another person.
No baby is born a criminal, and no one is ever born violent, so they have to learn it from the people who are already here. I don't know of anybody that I would believe could not be rehabilitated. I think the ones that have not been rehabilitated is because people have not cared enough to try.
Sister Fattah has been a journalist for more than 20 years, formerly women's editor for the Philadelphia Tribune, now a columnist for the Philadelphia Bulletin. She's with us this evening in New York. Sister Fattah, how many boys have been through your house since it started?
Over 500.
And how many of those have turned bad again?
Well, the only statistics that we have are from a study that was done by the Philadelphia Psychiatric Center in Philadelphia, and they told us that our recidivism rate was 3%.
I see. How do you get the boys? I mean, who brings them to you and how are they chosen?
The first boys that came to us, we extended an invitation to them. And
that's because your son was a member of the gang.
Yes, that's correct. So the first 200 came on their own. And for them, we were trying to provide sanctuary. The concept of sanctuary is one that is 5,000 years old. And it means a place where God lives, and it's a place of safety. So that was basically what we were attempting at that point. The last 300 boys have been referred through the court, and they're under a system under the Department of Public Welfare, where the judge actually commits the youth to the house for an indeterminate length of time.
Has that made a difference to the effectiveness of the house, the fact that some came voluntarily and these ones have been sent by a court?
The ones that have been sent by the court were harder to reach. It takes a little bit longer for them to become acclimated because it wasn't their idea.
What kind of offenses, give us a few examples, have the boys been convicted of or charged with who come to you? For instance, the ones you have right now.
We have the only offenses that we do not take are those persons who are psychotic, a mental disorder that would mean that they would be a danger to themselves or to people in the community. We don't take anyone who is involved with sex crimes.
But you have violent...
Yes, we have assault and battery, murder, everything.
We heard that you don't break up the gangs. You keep them intact as much as you can. What's the philosophy behind that?
Well, we have found that for some youth, the sense of togetherness, the sense of a social group, for some youth, the gang is the only place where they are accepted. And many of them are very alienated, so that you should not take away from someone something that you cannot replace.
You mentioned sanctuary, the concept of sanctuary and the place where God is. How much is religion a part of your therapy, if that's the word?
We don't have any particular religious affiliation. We don't propagate any particular faith. So the youth are all faiths, and a few atheists thrown in to boot.
What is the significance of your using some Islamic or Muslim words, like your own name, Falaka Fattah, for instance?
We, again, have borrowed from African tradition. Having been a kidnapped people, knowing that our names were not Smith and Jones, we decided very early on that we did not want to have slave names.
Are you Muslim yourself?
No, I'm not.
I see. When it comes right down to it, how do you explain to yourself why your system works?
Well, I'm not always sure that it does. The only time that I feel that it's working is when I see young people come back and they're married and they're doing well. Until that happens, I'm always worried that something is going to reach them and they won't be able to handle it. So I don't call the program a success. Everyone else seems to think it is. But if there is something that is working that is not working in other parts of the country, then I would think that it is a commitment and familyhood and a very strong belief system, a black value system.
You obviously are deeply involved in this yourself. Could it work elsewhere, or do you need you to make it work?
I think it can work elsewhere. I think there are other people who have very strong commitments to youth, but it is not something that one should take on lightly.
Why?
I think that many people have thought that you could prepare, for instance, a manual, a social work manual, and if you have all these rules written down, then anyone with a degree or what have you could follow it. I don't think that's what makes a program work. I think it's the people and it's their commitment and really love for young people.
Thank you. Jim?
Gang violence is viewed from a different perspective now, the perspective of a law enforcement official who has to cope with it in Los Angeles, the city, by most accounts, which has the worst gang problem in the country. The official is James Bascue, a prosecutor in the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office, who heads the county's hardcore gang unit. Mr. Bascue, first, how bad is your problem in Los Angeles?
Well, Jim, I think it's fair to say we've got an epidemic of crisis proportion. Last year, we had 392 people killed as a result of gang violence in our county. And this year, we would expect that it may even exceed that.
How many young people would you say are affiliated with gangs in your county?
Well, the experts estimate approximately 300 active street gangs with a population of something close to 30,000 street gang members.
Would the House of Umoja approach solve your problem in Los Angeles?
I think it's too simplistic to say one thing is going to solve. It's a very complex problem, but I certainly believe that the community would go a long way and as far as involvement in helping solve the problem. I talked to many young gang members, and basically they're uninvolved. They're not involved in family, they're not involved in church, they're not involved in school, and they don't see any alternatives. And when these young people reach that stage, many of them turn to gangs and they turn to violence. And so if we could have community-based programs such as Sister Fattah, I think it would certainly help.
You don't have them now, is that correct?
Well, we have many diversionary types of programs in our county, but I don't think there are very many with the commitment that are community-based, such as Sister Fattah.
Do you think there are certain kinds of juvenile gang types that could not be helped under the Sister Fattah system?
Well, I think it's a question of when. I think the earlier the better. I think a lot of these young people, we start losing them in the first grade, about 6 and 7 years of age. They start falling behind in school. And I'm reluctant to say never, but at some point when they're out there at 15, 16, 17 years of age and they've committed 2 or 3 homicides, I think at that point we've got to start talking about the protection of the community.
In other words, jail them.
Absolutely.
You agree then with the Philadelphia Assistant District Attorney on the tape? There are some people that just have to be incarcerated, right?
Well, I don't think there's any doubt that at some point we've got to think about protecting the community. We're talking about then incapacitation, and we're talking about deterrence.
Do you think jailing is a deterrent to young street gang types?
Oh, there's no doubt in my mind, and most of us in my county, we see the results of it. We talk to the young people. We've recently mobilized a task force approach between the District Attorney's Office and law enforcement, the probation department, and after we mobilize and have a task force operation, we go out and talk to the young people. They're very aware, and when the heat's on, they stop gang banging.
So if you don't have the fear of punishment, the fear of being arrested and jailed out there, it's not going to work, right? Is that what you're saying?
Well, that's not, I don't think it's quite that simple. I say that the criminal justice system is part of it, and it's part of the role to play. I mean, certainly the socioeconomic factors, I think, are probably major components in reducing gang violence. But I think there's certainly a role of the criminal justice system, that's deterrence, incapacitation, and there are parts of our county right now where there are no, it's almost the thugs or the criminal element control the streets. The people cannot walk to and from the store. The children can't go to the school to get an education. The people can't enjoy the parks. And one of the things we're trying to do is at least restore the rule of law to these communities.
And you'd see that as a police problem, first and foremost, then, right?
Part of it. That's the part I've just discussed is a police problem.
To get the streets back. I mean, to take the streets back from the gangs.
I think that's one of the first steps, and then we want to work and try and develop the sense of community and develop programs such as Sister Fattah.
You heard what Sister Fattah said on the tape, that to send these young people to jail actually makes them worse. They come out worse than when they went in. You agree with that?
I don't think jail does anyone any good. I think that certainly you would have to be very naive to think about locking someone else and that they're going to come out necessarily a better person. But I think statistically we have found that the most violent people committing crimes in our urban areas right now are the young people, the ages of 15, 16, up to 21 years of age. There was a recent RAND survey which studied career criminals, and they found that their highest frequency of committing offenses was between this age of 15 to 21. And for some of these people who are preying upon the community, I think we're going to have to lock them up for a significant period of time. When they get out of jail, they may commit crimes, but they're not going to be as dangerous as they were when they were 17 and 18 years of age.
Thank you. Robin?
Sister Fattah, do you believe that there are some who just have to be locked up?
I believe that just as we have had to take extraordinary measures in order to participate in the space program within a certain time period, I think that the criminal justice system, which for some of us is just us, needs that kind of attention. I think that putting people in jail, again, is just a postponement of the inevitable. Young people can be reached, and what we have used the prison system for is a backup to the House of Umoja. When we've had severe problems, we have gone to the prisons and had the inmates there help us to restore peace in the street.
What do you think of that, Mr. Bascue, using the prisons as a backup to the community base? You seem to be saying the opposite, that the community-based programs would be the backup to the prison system.
Well, no, I firstly think that if we had involved community people, such as Sister Fattah, and we had family, we had these young people getting an education with a sense of family and the proper values, we wouldn't have delinquency, we wouldn't have a gang problem. So I don't put the criminal justice system before that, but what I'm saying is that's not happening in my jurisdiction right now. There's a failure, and so we have a criminal justice response, and I wish we didn't have to respond. I wish we had stronger community and stronger education, because I think employment is one of the key things. These young people are coming out of the school systems or not in the school systems. They don't have a job. They don't have alternatives, and they're quote, hanging around.
Isn't that something that Sister Fattah's system provides?
Absolutely.
How important do you regard that?
I regard it as extremely important, because if youth do not feel that they are a participant in our society, then they turn against it.
Well, Sister Fattah and Mr. Bascue, thank you very much for joining this evening. Good night, Jim.
Good night, Robin.
That's all for tonight. We'll be back on Monday night. I'm Robert MacNeil. Good night.
For a transcript, send $2 to the MacNeil-Lehrer Report, Box 345, New York, New York, 10101. The MacNeil-Lehrer Report was produced by WNET and WETA. They are solely responsible for its content. Funding for this program has been provided by this station and other public television stations, and by grants from Exxon Corporation and AT&T and the Bell System Company.